Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Fire Force Chapter 298. When we last left our heroes, Shinra Bancho Man, even after Haumea became this despair saint, was still pretty easily able to knock back Haumea's weaponized despair, to the point where Haumea gained the ability to attack with the flames of Adola, and Shinra just turned them all into flowers. And eventually, at some point, turned all of Adola, or at least the large chunk of Adola where Shinra and Haumea are, into basically a new Garden of Eden, carrying on the show's kind of religious symbolism. To the point where, he even generates with the sheer power of hope, basically what he remembers the whale in Vulcan's workshop looking like. It's not exactly an accurate description of the whale, or accurate depiction of the whale, but it is meant to be the whale. Anyway, as that goes on, Haumea unleashes what she wants to be one final attack on Shinra that he grabs and deflects to create an atmosphere for this new world. That Arthur from space can see, the black sun of this new Adola starting to, the black flames start to retreat. That's where we leave off as Shinra asks Haumea, let's shed some tears in the rain, Despair Saint. So let's dive right on into Chapter 298. We open right where we left off, with Shinra and Haumea confronting each other in the rain of this new Garden of Eden. And Shinra tells her, let's shed all that despair through your tears in the rain. And Haumea is still crying, but also, the rain is not hitting her. There's this, barrier around her. Despair is despair, because no matter how much you try, it will not shed. Fire Force, Chapter 298, It's God. Let's continue. Got our Scan Later page, got our Go By The Manga page, but Shinra tells her, is that so? It was your tears that started this downpour, after all. Your tears made this world stronger, by making the rain pour and the earth firm up. Oh, because I guess, Haumea's tears are the symbolism of despair, and it was her despair that she attacked Shinra with, that Shinra then deflected to create the atmosphere. So yeah, in a way, this garden is kind of the result of that despair. The despair is now leading into hope. And a similar, I talked in the past about Mari being the symbol of hope, because the White-Clads saw the evangelist, this harbinger of despair, as a symbol of hope herself. Mari is hope because the White-Clad found their hope through despair, through surrender. And that's kind of a similar concept to what Shinra's talking about here. Haumea used her despair to attack Shinra, and Shinra created this whole new world, a world of hope, with that despair. Anyway, Shinra then kneels and puts his hands on the grass, and activates some kind of power, and just spawns mountains. He's just creating a world. I guess that is kind of in line with the series' religious symbolism. The chapter is titled It's God, and Shinra, as the savior, as this symbolic representation of Christ, who is, in the sort of complex Christian view, both God and not God. In that God segment, I guess by being the savior, Shinra is also a god? It makes sense in my head. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well at all. But he's creating mountains. I will say, though, this doesn't seem to be following, the creation story in Genesis. It's not, Let me run through the Genesis story again, because it's been a long time since I really looked at Genesis chapter 1. I'm going to pull it up and skim through it. So in the first day, there was light light day and darkness night, which you could argue is the sun. The sun could be the light. When Shinra started, the two suns already existed, and so maybe that's day and night. And then, God created the sky to separate the air and the water, which, he did create an atmosphere last chapter. It's just that he created the flowers before he created the atmosphere. It doesn't quite match the symbolism. But then he created land and the seas on day 3, and then plants, which we're already seeing here. I don't think it quite matches up, but maybe that's what Okubo was going for? I'm not sure. Either way, not only has Shinra created these mountains, he also created birds. You know about migratory birds? They travel long around the earth, depending on the season. Oh, I guess maybe in a society where like all of humanity is gathered around a handful of islands and a single peninsula a little ways off the shore, maybe they just don't know about migratory birds that well. You know, you don't get to see them in other locations because there are no other locations. But Haumea just watches aghast. How far will you? And then we see he's creating giraffes who are eating the plants, and fish in the sea and birds in the air. Those birds aren't just in Tokyo either. There are whole other continents where those migratory birds cross over to. So it does very much, like I don't think it quite follows one-to-one, you know, the beginning of the Christian creation story. But it definitely feels like it's flavored with that, if that makes any sense. And we see, you know, the birds flying over the ocean, leaving the land where Shinra and Haumea are. And we see Arthur up in space. We see the Soul Eater moon off in the corner as, you know, as Arthur watches, and we see continents form. And those continents might be intended to be our own continents. They're not quite fit. Like, I can see clearly South America on there, and maybe if I squint, that landmass to the upper left of it could be North America, but there's not really anything akin to, like, Central America connecting them. Like, there is a little bit of a wisp coming off of what might be North America, but that's not really looking like Central America. And then there's that continent below what might be North America that doesn't really fit with anything. So I don't know if this is meant to be the real world or what. But Arthur watches. The Star of Flames became a blue planet, huh? And Haumea just goes on the attack, firing another beam of despair. You still don't understand anything! And some of the land blows up behind Shinra. The plants kind of burn in the flames. With the completion of the Great Cataclysm, this planet was made into a sun. And yet you're still trying to repeat the sorrowness that has ceased for once? You can only be so irresponsible with power because you have not listened to the collective unconscious of humanity. You said I was like a god, didn't you? But isn't it you who gained the power of all creation and became God? The kanji Haumea uses for all creation is Shinra Bancho, which means all things in nature, all creation. Which is kind of getting at what I was floating around with all my Genesis allegories. You're the one who is irresponsibly recreating hell on earth. You're a devil that is under the facade of a god. And Shinra, he looks maybe a little taken aback by that, but like not distinctly. Not like terribly taken aback. But Haumea falls to her knees. God. We see the tears like are falling over her hands now. And she lifts up her head to pray. Oh Lord, you have caused us more suffering yet again. You may contradict yourself, but you're still God. So is it wrong for you to give an equal death and salvation to all things? I won't let you get away with escaping despair, Shinra Bancho Man. We see Shinra actually is kind of taken aback by Haumea's claim there. I'm God? And we flash to Sho and Mari inside his mind. And Sho tells him, Brother, I believe she's right. This doesn't solve anything. I used to be a white-clad too, so I can sympathize with the saint's path. You are recreating the world as you please, but the saint is one who creates the despair and thrives off of it. Okay, hold on. Because I was under the impression that Haumea was just experiencing, or that Haumea was told she was experiencing the pain. And I had the theory for a while that the evangelist was like selectively filtering all the negative emotions in the world, just giving her those negative emotions, but that kind of seems to have been proven incorrect. What I am kind of curious about here, though, is this line, the saint is one who creates the despair and thrives off it. Because that's not really the image we've been presented in the past. But also Sho kind of has I think on some level Sho might have a point. That if Shinra creates the world as he remembers it, then in the end we're just going in circles. We're in the exact same place we were at the beginning. A new white-clad allegory will arise to just do all the same things the old white-clad did. Not white-clad allegory. White-clad, it fills the same role as the white-clad. I don't know the word. Anyway, the saint is one who creates the despair and thrives off of it. By recreating the earth, you only make the saint suffer again, along with the rest of humanity. So, brother, what are you actually trying to achieve? Is the goal to try and create Eden? Because even a paradise like Eden is sure to fall. So there's an interesting thing, because I've called out the Garden of Eden parallels, but I was unaware that the people of the Church of Saul had the concept of Eden. It's an interesting little bit there. Anyway, Shinra just sort of takes that in, and then he suddenly senses something, and we see that whale he created start to dissipate into the black flames again, and those flames head towards Shinra. This is the despair that Haumea has been exposed to, and we see what must be that young Haumea first feeling that collective despair. Disgusting, pain, I feel empty, it's so cold. Excuse me, I feel empty, I don't want to, it's so cold, pain, it hurts, it's so cold, it goes on and on and on, and we see her, I'm assuming it's the first time she felt that pain. And Shinra looks over as the whale dissipates. It's not really attacking him, but it's just kind of dissipating. Even from such an innocent flower blossom comes despair that is unleashed spontaneously. Even from me. And we see those same flames of despair emanating from Shinra. So maybe at this point he's become like the saint? Able to sense that despair? I don't know. But we see the crown that Haumea used to put over her eyes, and we see her first put it on. And Shinra looks over at Haumea. So that's what she's been doing all along. And Haumea calls back to another argument that Shinra made a couple chapters ago. That hysterical strength you talk about is just another way to escape from despair. And the only ones who can do that are the established, like you. It's something only the strong can do. So we're going back to those themes again of main character and minor character that I thought we had kind of left behind when we left the main world into Adola. And admittedly, the hysterical strength thing only happened in the main world. But still, Haumea kind of attacks him verbally. Have you ever thought about what it's like to be weak? Being blamed for the death of your family. Despite the slander, you stood up and pushed forward. As a fire soldier that protects the weak, all those vulnerable souls. Have you ever thought about those nameless people even once? The weak don't know how to fight despair. They do not see despair. And without acknowledging it, they crumble. And as they are unconscious, it overfloods the world. Lord, will you not let the weak escape this hell? Oh, at this point, she's serious about Shinra being God. She's straight up praying to Shinra. But Shinra protests, that's not right. I'm not God. But Sho corrects him, no, the power you are wielding definitely belongs to a god. Brother, what do you intend to do? And Shinra is just kind of taken aback at the sort of bad turn his plans have taken. As there is death at the end of life, there is despair behind hope. As for the ultimate question, is there even an answer? To be continued, chapter 299, answer. Okay. So, given the way that ending blurb frames it, as for the ultimate question, is there even an answer? And next chapter being titled Answer, I do believe next week might be the climax of Fire Force. I still predict it will go on. I think 304 was the prediction I made last week. Excuse me. Just given, there's basically always 9 chapters per volume. Okubo said there are 2 more volumes. The last volume ended at 286, which leaves us at 304 for our ending. But I think maybe the last 5 chapters might just be, a bit of a wrapping up of this whole series, and also like Okubo's career. This is kind of the end of his career. But yeah, that's sort of the question. Shinra is seeing firsthand that despair does kind of come from hope. And so, what do you do about... Or despair can still come, even in the best of circumstances. So what do you do about that? And as the blurb kind of wonders, can you do anything? I also kind of wonder, should you do anything? Is the answer to get rid of despair, or is it to accept despair as a part of life and find a more holistic way to move forward? I think that's the healthiest answer. Because you'll never truly end despair. That's not really a thing that can happen, I don't think. Just speaking of my own personal beliefs here. And so I think the answer Shinra needs to find is, how do I put this? What Shinra needs to find is the ability to accept that despair happens, but that doesn't really override the hope. And that hope can still be more powerful than despair, even if despair is never truly gone. You can't make everyone happy. That's not how life works. And I think Shinra's been caught in this story of hope versus despair. One has to be the winner. And I think perhaps that final answer might be no, there is no winner. In life, despair and hope exist together. That's just part of life. That's how it goes. Like it or not, that's your life. And I hope that's the answer he comes to, because, the thematic musings of Fire Force have always been just really, really engaging. And I hope it sticks the landing in the end. Or if it's not the answer I'm predicting, just an answer that really works. I don't have to be right, but, I think I might be. Anyway, let's talk about this chapter, though. Let's talk about the rest of the chapter, not just that final little exchange, which is so good. We do see Shinra just kind of becoming a god. It's not what he wants. It's desperately not what he wants, not what he considers himself. But he is, going back to the kind of Catholic imagery that imbues Fire Force, not fucking Soul Eater, imbues Fire Force. Shinra's creating the world. That is the actions of God. That is definitively the actions of God. That's what God, in the Christian story, God creates the world. It's what he does. It's how the story begins. And Haumea kind of calls him out. You still don't understand anything. You're just trying to start this whole cycle over again. And they'll still end in the same place. Haumea's kind of right there also. If Shinra doesn't change something, a new White Cloud organization will emerge, maybe powered by the same evangelist that created the last one, and we'll just end up in the exact same place we were 200 years ago when the first Cataclysm started. And I don't think she's right to say he's irresponsibly recreating hell on earth, a devil under the facade of a god, but I do think she's right to kind of call him out. He's not really in the... He's in the right morally, I think, but he needs a different solution. His solution isn't quite perfect. It's, when Sho calls out, is the goal to try and create Eden, because even a paradise like Eden is sure to fall, that is an important part of the story. Eden falls. Eden doesn't last. Admittedly, it's because of, it's not like despair caused Eden to fall. It was like the gift of knowledge or whatever. Though perhaps that knowledge created despair in Okubo's worldview? I'm not sure. If I had a bit more time to really ponder that, I might be able to work out a way to tie the eating of the apple to despair. But I don't have that time right now, so I'm not going to think too hard on that. But yeah, then Shinra is really forced to accept that despair doesn't need a cause, I think, is the best way to frame it. People despair for all kinds of reasons, and you can't really get rid of all of them. And so what is the answer he comes to? How to create a good world that's not, how to create a world that can, how to deal with that despair without just, mass genocide is the question Shinra needs to find, that final answer to. And oh boy, I can't wait to see it all play out. So yeah, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe. You know, do whatever makes you happy, you know? And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!